Hello again from BSP headquarters. You're currently listening to episode number 6 of the Black Swamp podcast. This is where we've been giving you a chance to eavesdrop on conversations with Black Swamp artists and educators the last few months. We've also got content on the way featuring members of Team BSP, so that's something to look forward to. Of course, feel free to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and help spread the word to friends and colleagues. There's a lot of great podcast content out there, whether you're into sports, politics, current events, history, whatever. So we really appreciate you tuning into our series. If you have time and listen through Apple Podcasts, drop us a rating. The more stars, the better. This also helps get our little podcast out to more potential listeners. Before we get to our latest interview, I want to talk about something a little further down the road, and that is PASIC 2019, happening this November. In case you don't know, PASIC is the annual Percussive Arts Society International Convention at which we exhibit Black Swan products. PASIC is a really great opportunity to attend clinics and master classes presented by musicians and educators from around the world. And you also have a chance to explore musical instruments and other percussive-related businesses on the convention floor there. So we'll be driving down to Indianapolis this November and bringing with us some new products for a special celebration we'll be launching at the show. So be sure to follow us online, Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter, or subscribe to our newsletter. We'll throw a link in the show notes. This way you'll stay current on all the activities we're planning leading up to the convention. Then, of course, visit the Black Swamp booth at PASIC if you are traveling down to Indianapolis or up to Indianapolis or over, wherever you're from, and you can experience everything firsthand. Okay, moving on to the present. Today's episode features a great conversation with Joseph Gramley. Little known fact, Joe is actually one of our very first official artist endorsers. He's been with the company, 20 years maybe, almost 20 years. And Joe is a very active performer, educator, globetrotter. Also recently appointed as a professor of music and percussion at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music. He's also a founding member of Yo-Yo Ma's Silkroad Ensemble. And really, this is kind of just a tip of his wide and varied career in the music industry. And we will gradually dig into this, starting right now. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know you have a lot of ties to... Sorry, let me back up. Where are you? Where are you right now, Joe?
Right now I'm at home in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
Enjoying the beautiful, hot humidity.
Yeah, well, okay. At home in Charleston, that's not what I expected at all. Because I know, obviously, you have ties to Michigan, but you just recently got a job at Indiana University, but then you're also active in New York, I think. So I never know. Sometimes I never know where people are when we pick up the phone and talk to each other. So Charleston is home.
Yep. I split my time between Charleston and Bloomington now, so I get the best of both worlds. And actually, you had mentioned New York. I do still teach up in New York at the Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar.
Sure.
I just got home from that, another great year. Actually celebrated my 20th year there, so that was really exciting to be back.
Yeah.
Did they have a big party, like cake, balloons, kind of a big festivities, or it was low-key? Sounds like it was low-key then.
Pretty low key up there. Yeah, we were quite busy. So
yeah.
We celebrated in spirit.
Yeah, cool. So how long have you been in Charleston then?
I've been down here about a year and a half.
Okay.
Splitting my time. Previously, as you know, I was at the University of Michigan directing the program for 12 years, and now I'm super excited to start next month at IU Jacobs School of Music in Bloomington.
Yeah, that's awesome news and congratulations. It's really exciting. I think before we get too far into that, sometimes I like to get kind of a history of where like our artists and educators came from, what their kind of story is. So I know you have ties to Michigan, but you were not a native Michigander. Is that correct? You were, I think, born in Oregon or grew up in Oregon?
Yes, yes, both born and raised in Oregon. Okay. I'm from a very small farm town called Coburg. It's in the Willamette Valley. It's halfway between Eugene, where the University of Oregon is, and Corvallis, where Oregon State is.
Right.
Our farm was about midway between those two cities.
Right.
And I come from a very big family with 5 kids, and I was the youngest. And we had a piano at home, and my older brothers and sisters all played.
Yeah.
And when I was 8, I started with piano lessons.
Okay.
And this for me was, I think, really the catalyst or the engine that pushed me forward in a really positive way in music, because I had an amazing first teacher. Her name was Marie Siegel. She instilled this joy and this love of music in me. I was never forced to practice. I always loved practicing.
Oh,
it was
sort of
different. my time. Yeah, I know, and I feel really. I still feel that way. I still love to practice. I think in terms of whatever gene I got from that, I feel very lucky. Then I made a deal with my mom, who would be driving me to piano lessons every week. It was about 45 minutes to go into town. Literally, you know, when you say I'm going to go into town, you literally did go into town from the farm. She said, well, I'd expressed an interest in playing the drums, which is, at that point in my life, what I thought percussion was, the drums.
Oh, like drum set.
And she said, basically snare drum and drum set.
Okay.
And my mom said, okay, do a good solid year of piano and keep a strong interest in that and following through on that. And then we can look into drum lessons for you.
Sure.
And so I did. You know, I still love playing the piano. It was going great. I played actually up until I was age 15. And we then found a teacher at the University of Oregon. I started studying with a master's student there.
Okay.
And again, another teacher that was just kind and joyful and really focused on all the positive attributes of why we all love music.
And so this was a percussion educator, obviously. What kind of led you to percussion? I mean, from piano, was there something that sort of triggered an interest in it?
Yes, there was. It was the physicality of percussion and drums.
Yeah.
I was a big athlete when I was younger.
Oh, okay.
And both of my brothers were much more into athletics than I was. Actually, my closest brother was an All-American water polo player and was on the U.S. Junior Olympic team. And then my oldest brother was a state wrestling champion. And so we were always playing sports together. And what I loved about when I watched artists play the drums and percussion was the physicality of it, the mechanics, the way that it's sort of this visceral connection to the instrument. And I believe strongly that this combination of the physicality with the artistic made a really, really great fit for me. I have always felt a really strong connection to sort of the way that we make sounds on percussion through our physical mechanics.
And I think that's, as I talk to more people on the podcast, I think that's a common thread. Like the physicality of it, the movement is a big draw for musicians because, I've mentioned this before when talking to people, like many percussionists started off playing a different instrument, either like piano in your case and many other cases, but violin, saxophone, flute, which I think is all pretty interesting. But then there's a draw to like the movement and the physicality of playing percussion, which everyone has found real connection with. So it's interesting to hear that. What sports did you play then?
Well, Eugene, Oregon, which was the closest city to where I grew up, is called the track capital of the world.
Okay.
So it's a huge track and field town, and I used to be on an AAU youth sort of traveling track team.
Okay.
Did high jump and hurdles. Did the pentathlon, and then I played football up until 9th grade.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really tall right now, but actually back then I was quite small, and so I didn't weigh enough. I didn't weigh enough in 8th grade to play 8th grade football, so I had to play with the 7th graders, which was quite the blow to my ego.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of basketball until I didn't grow until very, very late, and so everybody passed me by. So I never made varsity in high school at football nor basketball, and I think this allowed music and percussion to begin to pass and move forward into my main focus, my main area of interest.
Yeah.
There's just one more thing I wanted to mention about the sort of the physicality of percussion, and that's one of the interesting aspects is that we're one of the few instrument groups that don't directly touch often the instrument that we play. Usually there's a conduit, be it a stick, sure, or a mallet or a beater. And when we talk about the physicality and this sort of visceral connection to the instrument, it's funny to actually realize that there is a conduit. That conduit often disappears when we take on hand percussion. And in my case, that was later in life. And I think a lot of drummers and classical percussionists who start out end up sort of augmenting their instruments to include hand drums, which you would think would be the physical and the visceral connection, which it is, because you have that direct connection to the drum head. I do, though, think that this conduit, the stick, the beater, the mallet, for me, adds to the physical nature of percussion, much like you have some sort of implement in sports, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Either football or basketball. So I think it's just one interesting thing to think about in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, I mean, I was not an athletic child. I tried. I was a similar situation. I tried t-ball, but wasn't quite strong enough or fast enough, or I kind of started later. So I got. I was playing t-ball. All my friends were playing, fast pitch baseball by that time. So it does kind of leave you a little defeated and like, I guess I'll move on to something else. And I was the kid that, I humbly admit I tried out for the basketball team in 7th grade, and it's still kind of a joke in my house because I've told my children and they think it's hilarious. Like, I forgot to bring gym clothes, so I tried out for basketball in like my sweater and slacks or whatever I was wearing to school that day. So, and it was just kind of embarrassing. And I was like, okay, this is not who I am. Obviously, I didn't make the first cut. So, and by that time I was already playing percussion and kind of had a drum set and was in band and stuff like that. And I can totally relate to the sort of physical aspect of it. Like, and I don't really think about it obviously at the time, but it was definitely a physical outlet and interest for me. And obviously, using the implements, sticks, mallets, or whatever, definitely aids in kind of the performance of that. Just like you need a bat to play baseball, or you need a hockey stick to play hockey. Like it all helps. Okay, so you're back on track, I guess, with your life. You are by this time studying kind of in high school with with a college professor or a teacher at a college level, and you're working your way through high school playing music right now.
Yeah, I was continuing with piano, and I picked up the string bass, so I was the sole bass player in an orchestra.
Well, or you could be like a one man like jazz trio or something like.
That's right. That's right.
Do you still play bass?
No, I don't play bass.
Oh, okay.
But of course, we percussionists and drummers, our best friends must be the bass player. So that's always good. That's always good for me.
Right.
And when I play with Silkroad, I make it a point. I'm always set up directly next to our bass player.
Right.
So that's good for me. No, at 15, the sports had dropped off, and I was really focused mainly on percussion, still playing bass and piano. Dropped those, though, that year to devote more time to percussion.
Sure.
And that summer was pivotal for me because I went away for 8 weeks to Michigan, to the Interlochen Summer Music Camp. I think back then it was called the National Music Camp. My teacher had seen a poster for it and recommended that I apply. And this was a huge moment for me. My first airline flight, back then you would sort of walk out on the tarmac and climb the stairs of the airplane.
Right.
I remember turning around.
Right.
Remember turning around and seeing my parents there. And I waved goodbye and I went out to Interlochen in 8 weeks. And it's funny, I got out there and I did pretty well in the first audition. And I didn't know anything really. This farm kid from Oregon. And there were a bunch of really, really great players there. And back then they had something called challenges, where if you were a certain number chair in the orchestra or the band, you could sort of challenge up, move up a spot each week in these blind sort of excerpt challenges. And they sort of came for me that first week. And I dropped from first down to fifth.
Oh, no.
And, yeah.
You got too comfortable.
Exactly. But it brought out the competitive nature in me. But more importantly, and everyone was super nice. More importantly, it showed me where I needed to be at that time in my life to be successful.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of other players from around the country that were just really, really talented and outstanding and very versatile on all the instruments. And this being my first big exposure to a national type of environment with players from all over, it was a really big eye-opener for me.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, do you remember who you were in session with then? Like who else was playing?
I remember three of the players. One was Eric Scorsese, Dan Collison, and John Hitt were three of the other percussionists. John ended up going to Oberlin, and Dan went to Eastman. But the interesting about Dan and John was that they both went to the Interlochen Arts Academy.
Oh, okay.
So, I looked at these older players, these players who were better than I was, and made the connection. I said, okay, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to go away to this high school and get myself prepared for those next steps.
Yeah.
Came home from the camp, had an amazing time, and asked my parents if I could go to this high school for my sophomore year, and they said no.
Not going to happen.
Nope, definitely wasn't going to happen in 1985. So after a year of lobbying and practicing and working at a couple jobs, saving up money, they did allow me to go away for my junior and senior years of high school. And this was the beginnings of the sort of Michigan connection.
Yeah, sure.
I got to know the state. I got to know some of the teachers in the area. Interlochen Arts Academy would tour all the high school students around in outreach performances. And it was then that I got connected to Professor Michael Udow at the University of Michigan.
Oh, okay. So he would visit for master classes or teaching, or you would happen to connect with him on tour?
No, I think he came up for a master class at Interlochen, and then also in the summertime, two of the directors of the program, H. Robert Reynolds was the band director, and Donald Senta, the famous saxophone pedagogue, were his colleagues, and so they were sort of recruiting me to come to Michigan. And I had met Mike Udow previous to that, of course, in the master class, and went down to Ann Arbor for a couple lessons. And after doing the audition circuit and looking at a bunch of other schools, I ended up choosing to go to Michigan and to work with Michael Udow and Professor Reynolds and some of the other teachers there.
Right. Sorry, but was John Alfieri teaching at Interlochen then?
Yes, he was. He was my
Oh.
high school teacher,
Right.
and we had a great relationship for those 2 years. And as you know, he continued on for many years afterwards,
Right.
and developed just some amazing players. Generations of outstanding percussionists came
Have
out
you
of
been
that
to-
school.
Have you been to Interlochen recently?
I did a class a few years ago,
Okay.
right before John retired.
Right.
They have a new music performance building, and I think it'll be part of the percussion department and some other departments there. It's beautiful. I don't. It's not quite open yet, but I try to go up there once or twice a year and see Keith Aleo, and that they're almost ready to open the doors on this new facility, and it's gorgeous. So if you have a chance to go, I know he's looking forward to moving into that space. But so you decide to go study with Mike Udow at U of M.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I did my undergrad there, and also we would alternate weekly. My other professor was Salvatore Robbio, who was the principal timpanist of the Detroit Symphony. So for me, this was just an amazing experience in developing some of those, the core foundational techniques and concepts of sound that we all need. This was a really a good environment for me. My brothers and sisters had also gone to universities, and so I was also able to take advantage of some of the other courses that were offered at the university. I was an Italian minor, so I speak fluent Italian, which has served me very well.
Yeah.
Sorry, back up a second. Your siblings, do they still play music? Are they still involved in music?
They're not. They all dropped it in high school. I'm actually the only one that has kept it going. Some of my nieces and nephews play, which is always gratifying to see.
Cool. Curious. An entire family that's taking piano lessons and playing. I'm always curious sometimes of siblings or family members that are still performing.
Mm-hmm. I do have one cousin who's a conductor, but in our quite large family, we're the only two professional musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah, so U of M, you're developing a sound and progress to Juilliard, or is there some space in between kind of master's, or I guess undergrad and master's work?
I actually did go straight through. I went from directly from Ann Arbor to New York City and started my master's at Juilliard, which I did in 3 years. I extended it a little bit, which was really great because it gave me more opportunity. It gave me an opportunity to have a place to practice, which in New York City is often one of the biggest hurdles that a grad can face when they're finished with their studies is a place to practice. Juilliard gave me just an outstanding exposure to other musicians, artists, teachers, dancers, and actors. It put me where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in New York. And at that point in my life, it's interesting, my goals had changed almost yearly since I was 15. My dream in the beginning was to be the principal percussionist of the New York Philharmonic. Back when I was 15 and 16. And I, of course, retained a strong interest in orchestral studies, and for all intents and purposes, sort of was trained to play in an orchestra through my studies at Michigan and, of course, at Juilliard. But I loved the city. I loved everything that it had to offer culturally. And when I did graduate with my master's at age 25, I was then at a point where I wanted to try everything. I wanted to focus on collaboration and different styles, genres, and idioms all across music.
Yeah.
And New York was the place where I could do that. And so I moved there with that in mind, and Juilliard was an exceptional sort of anchor for me. It gave me a foothold in the city. Yeah.
And is this when, let's see, you were 25, you said, and is this kind of where you start to collaborate with? I mean, you have Organized Rhythm, which is with an organist, Clive Driscoll Smith, and then also obviously you're associated with Silkroad. Is this is there kind of a progression here, or is this around the same time period where you start those collaborations?
It is, exactly. So I began focusing sort of my artistic energies on collaboration right about 1995 when I was 25. I joined a percussion group called Ethos Percussion Group.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, they're still together.
Are they really?
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
my good friends are there. Yeah.
I don't mean to chuckle. I just remember now, like, making this connection. I went to the University of Akron, and that was like 98, 99, and Ethos came and played at the hall connected to the university. And obviously, I'm sure you were playing then at that time.
I remember that trip. I was playing. So that was a great experience for me. All of the touring, actually, and learning about sort of how the industry worked. And we had a manager and made a bunch of recordings. So it was there through Juilliard, and then through a lot of summer festivals where my focus on collaboration and chamber music really came to the forefront. Mm-hmm. I stayed in Ethos for, 5 years, 1995 to 2000. And that was when I started working with Yo-Yo, was the summer of 2000. And my friend Wumon, who's the P-pop player, the sort of grande dame of the P-pop, she's from Beijing, and she and I were doing an opera at the Spoleto Festival, which is a festival where I'd worked for about 6 or 7 summers.
Okay.
And she was talking to me about Yo-Yo and the Silkroad project, as it was called at that time. And would I be interested in coming up for a workshop where we were going to do 25 new commissions from composers from all over the lands of the Silkroad? And I mean, of course, I said yes. Yeah. What an amazing opportunity. So there were about 60 of us invited up to Tanglewood in August of 2000. And again, it was really sort of right in my wheelhouse. It was experimentation, instruments from all over the world, combining a Western classical training with a lot of the world percussion that I had begun to study throughout those years. And the chamber music skills that I had been developing in undergrad and grad school and then in New York. It was, for me, just an amazing fit to be with like-minded artists and conductors and composers willing to try anything and everything, and also things that just had never been done before. These instruments had never been on the same stage at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we built this trust, and we began a conversation that summer. So again, we're in the summer of 2000. We all began a conversation together. Yo-Yo was our leader, and he brought together masters of traditions from India, from Iran, Azerbaijan, Japan, Korea.
Wow.
And there was 60 of you said? 60 people invited to this workshop or session?
Yep, there were 60 of us, 25 new pieces, so we were all split up into different configurations. Each piece, no 2 pieces had the same instrumentation. Many of them included cello, which was obviously a smart move because the composers, of course, were hoping that Yo-Yo would join on their piece, right. which he did.
Yeah.
There were also those 6 other cellists to help out those 2 weeks. Yeah.
And is this what formed into the kind of Silkroad Ensemble, or how did that transition?
Exactly. It was a grand experiment
that
summer with the 60 of us. And the original plan was to keep the Silkroad project touring and sort of in operation for 3 years. Our first sponsor was Sony Music. So our offices were out of Sony Music headquarters on Madison Avenue in New York. We began our first tour in January of 2001. And then the world changed. 9/11 happened.
That a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft. We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are.
We all realized that this work was now more important than ever.
Yeah, sure.
And the bonds that we were developing, the trust and the collaboration and the communication across cultures, we were embracing other cultures rather than sort of running from them.
Major incident in Lower Manhattan.
We just got a report in that there's
You have
been
no
some
idea
sort of
right
explosion.
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit. Right. Oh my gosh. Another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
Has crashed.
My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
This one into the east.
And Sony Music, we all got together and we said, this work, we have to continue this work. It's vital. And so Silkroad decided to not stop, not shutter its doors after 3 years. And we kept working and kept recording albums. And now, believe it or not, we're at our 20th anniversary.
Yeah, and that's I guess what I didn't realize is you were there pretty much from the ground up, and if I have this correct, like later on, artistic director of the ensemble. So obviously a pretty integral part of the ensemble and the direction that it's headed.
It did, yeah. Thanks, Tim. It did become my main artistic focus for those 15 or so years.
Yeah.
Yo-Yo appointed me to be associate artistic director, and that was a wonderful experience to work directly with.
Sorry, associate artistic director. I'll make that clear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that entail then?
Sure. So I got to work directly with Yo-Yo in matters of programming, personnel, commissioning, developing new works. As Silkroad grew and matured and developed, we started to forge our own identity and our own sound. We lessened the numbers a little bit. 60 was a little bit unwieldy to tour with, just given sort of the economics of the 21st century arts economy. Some folks self-selected in, some folks self-selected out, based upon a lot of different factors, of career or family or location and interest.
Right.
So it wasn't like The Voice then, or like an elimination process, sort of the Silkroad ensemble has got talent kind of thing.
No, we love to say that anyone who's playing with us at any time is a member of Silkroad. That's sort of our ethos or our mantra is welcoming the other. But we do, to be able to function in a touring capacity, in a recording capacity, we have a set of core ensemble members, numbering about 15 at this point. And on each different recording or each tour, you'll see some of the founding members along with some new artists. And for about 4 to 5 years, I was the associate artistic director with Yo-Yo. And then he decided to step down.
Oh, really?
He felt, this was about 2015. He felt that it was time to pass the torch. He had begun an amazing project, which is going on right now, where he's playing the 6 Bach cello suites on 6 continents, 36 concerts over 3 years.
Yeah.
And in each stop, he's doing a day of action with the community and engaging with the different cultures and communities where he's touring. And this afforded Silkroad an opportunity to sort of have the younger generation take ownership of the ensemble. And we appointed 3 co-artistic directors, and right now we're in the search for a new executive director. So we are in transition right now. Yo-Yo still plays with us when he can, and it's a really exciting time for us as we take our next sort of steps on our own.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call them
growth.
baby. Yeah, I wouldn't call them baby steps because we have been together for so long.
Right.
But it's a great time to sort of reimagine ourselves and recommit to what we're about cross-culturally.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about Organized Rhythm? Because I know you're still, and for those listening, that is a percussion and organ duo with Clive Driscoll-Smith. And you're still playing and touring. I mean, you were overseas in May in Budapest. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
and we're gearing up for a show in Taipei coming up in a couple weeks.
And
So, Tim, this is... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, just an interesting combination of instruments. When I kind of first met you and knew you were playing in this duo, it seemed a little unlikely, I guess, percussion and organ, but obviously it works because, again, just like Silkroad, I mean, you guys have been doing this for quite a long time, and then still playing and touring. So how did that come about? I mean, how did you kind of discover this was a nice combination of instrumentation?
Yeah, so this has been one of the sort of funny surprises of my musical career.
Sure.
The organ percussion duo. You know, it doesn't immediately come to mind, right?
yeah, of course.
When I left Ethos in 2000, I went on a big effort to find my own manager because I was wanting to do more solo work.
Sure.
And I signed up with a manager out of Hartford. His name was Philip Truckenbrod. And it turns out that in the organ world, there are 2 top management companies. Karen McFarland out of Cleveland and Philip Truckenbrod, who I signed with. He had wanted to branch out into other instruments and instrument groupings. And so I signed with Phil. And a few months later, I got a phone call. And it was from Clive Driscoll-Smith. And he said, "Hello, this is Clive Driscoll-Smith. I noticed that we're on the same management roster. Clive had just done a concert with Colin Curry at Westminster Abbey."
Okay.
And it was a concert called Organ Plus. And as I've come to learn, as I've entered the whole organ world, which is its own unique universe, much like percussion, a lot of concert series will sometimes do an Organ Plus, like Organ Plus Trumpet or Organ Plus Choir or Organ Plus... in this case, it was organ plus percussion at Westminster Abbey, and Clive worked on the concert for months because the music was actually quite difficult. There was a piece by Dave Merritt, who's a longtime collaborator of Collins, and there was an epic work by William Bolcom, who actually used to teach at U of M. Clive loved the combination, and I didn't know who Clive was at this time. He called me and said, would I be interested in doing some work together? We're on the same roster. Why don't we see if Phil can book us some concerts? And as has been the case with my career, and especially when I was younger, if the phone rang for me, the answer was pretty much always yes.
Right.
Yes, I want to try this.
Yeah.
Yes, this sounds like a great challenge. Yes, I need a gig. Right?
Yeah.
So I said yes, and we planned. We met up in Hartford. Clive was the organist at Christ Church, Oxford, in England.
Okay.
Exactly where they filmed Harry Potter. And he flew over for a tour of his own, and we hadn't started playing together yet. We met for a day, planned some repertoire, started planning some commissions, and we commissioned a couple pieces every year. That was 2003, and we are still playing together. And
Tim, I got to tell you, it's been one of the most amazing surprises of my career. This
cool.
strange combination, which we're the most active duo of this makeup in the world, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, when you first started playing together, it was organ like half recital and then percussion half, or when Clive came out to the US to meet you, it was like the initial intention was to play as a duo.
Yeah, the initial intention was to play as a duo, but you're right on the mark because some presenters who were booking this were a little afraid of the combination.
Yeah.
They weren't sure that their mostly organ series audiences would take to it. So they would have Clive play a few solo pieces on the program. But we did start out as a duo with a few solo pieces thrown in. And we would always start, for the first couple of years, we would start our concerts with Bach as a way to ingratiate, introduce, welcome our audience.
Right.
Rather than scare them away.
It's a little more accessible, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, it's just like sort of when we talk about Silkroad. You need to begin a conversation somehow. You need to build trust. Right? And so to build trust with these audiences, we started with Bach, and then we would expand from there. And it's been a great sort of journey for me as well, learning how to deal with different types of presenters and different types of series, and finding out the things that are interesting to those presenters and their audiences, while also trying to honor and respect our own work. And we do that through commissions and some of our own arrangements.
When that was one of my questions, when you do commissions, are composers hesitant as well, or do they sort of accept the challenge with as much energy and excitement as you did?
Oh, they've been amazing. We just finished a round of 3 commissions, and all 3 composers were extremely excited about writing for the duo, and they each approached it in a very, very different way. One of the composers is named William Sussman. He's from Palo Alto. His main interest in his composition, which is called Haskalah, which is marimba and organ, was this dichotomy. The dichotomy is when you press a key down on the organ, until you lift your hand up, the sound is continuous.
Yeah.
Whereas us percussionists, as you very well know, once we strike our instrument, we're done.
Right.
That's it.
Right. You can't take it back.
Yeah. So exactly, right? So this is a commingling of opposites in his piece. So there's a lot of impactful single notes on the marimba with a lot of sustain on the organ. And then I commissioned a student of mine, actually Jacob Rogers, and his take was similar, but he used vibes and glockenspiel and allowed for a little bit more sustain than what was on the marimba.
Sure.
The other composer that we just commissioned, Stephen Eddins, we wanted a piece for hand drums from around the world, and so he wrote a piece featuring 5 or 6 hand drums, and this piece is just incredibly energetic and exuberant and joyous.
Yeah.
So three pieces, 3 really different takes on this very unique combination.
Yeah, and that was another question. I mean, are most of what you're playing melodic percussion, or in this case, there's hand drums, but is there other more tactile stuff? Not necessarily marimba vibes, glockenspiel.
Yes, there's a pretty big, actually pretty nice balance. We do a famous piece from the organist who was at Notre Dame in Paris, and it's a bolero, and that's for snare drum and organ. And that's actually a very famous piece for organists to play. The other pieces that we do, I'm a huge fan of multi-percussion. That's sort of where I feel the most comfortable. And so we have an arrangement of the planets where I have everything from four timpani, concert bass drum, tam-tam, marimba, vibes, glockenspiel, a bunch of cymbals, triangles, tambourines.
Right.
So we have quite a stage full of instruments.
And you have a CD, Beaming Music, that's older. If no offense, it's older, but so I mean, obviously you have new works and commissions, and you're touring and playing. Is there a new CD in the works?
We do. We are always commissioning and touring, and we're planning on releasing a slate of those commissions next year. Some of them are already up on video on our website and on my website. In the time since that CD was released, of course, the CD world has drastically changed.
Right.
So we're going to be releasing these pieces on a bunch of different platforms over the next year as we finish up a couple more commissions that are in the works. So definitely, folks, be on the lookout for those.
So I don't mean to kind of gloss over your work at U of M and now Indiana, but part of what I really want to talk about is because your career has been really varied and obviously successful. If you could touch on how maybe some of that developed, or what you've learned along the way, or what is a strategy if you have one, or just kind of building a career in the percussion or music industry.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, for me, it's always been about remaining open to new experiences. And again, it goes back to the collaboration. As I started in New York in the 90s, freelancing and forging a career as a chamber musician, Broadway musician, and orchestral player, the keys for me was just that: being open, being versatile across many different percussive platforms. And as I developed my performing career, my teaching interest grew, and my teaching experiences began to inform my work as a performer. My performing work most definitely informs my work as a teacher. And so the sort of my pedagogical career and my performing career developed and grew at the same time, to the point where in 2007 they met in the middle. They met in the middle when I was very much involved in the running of Silkroad and commissioning and performing and touring with Silkroad. And this want for me, a need to give back and to focus more of my energies on teaching. So I made a conscious decision to combine those two worlds. And that was when the job at University of Michigan came open. That was 2007. I applied. I remember I had played a concert in Chicago with Chicago Symphony. Silkroad had done a week of concerts. And I remember that my interview at Michigan was the morning after the concert in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I got the first flight out. I think I even had to wear the same concert clothes that I wore before.
Well, hopefully there's an iron in the hotel room somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I was lucky enough to get the job, and this allowed me, as I was talking about before, to combine my two true sort of areas of focus and the things that I loved the most, which were performing and teaching. And to do that and to get to that point, I think, Tim, the key was remaining open to any and all experiences and opportunities that presented themselves to me, be it playing on Broadway, to playing at the Metropolitan Opera, recording solo CDs, collaborating with Glenn Velez, whatever came my way, I wanted to experience that. And while I was doing all of that, the 21st century sort of arts landscape also began to change. And a student and a young professional was now called upon to do more than ever. You were called upon to be able to play drum set, to be an exceptional orchestral percussionist, to be able to read down a Broadway show, to go into a school and become a teaching artist, to teach privately. These skills were needed as certain sectors of our field started to become both more competitive and have less jobs.
Yeah.
So I found myself teaching at a time when what I had done, I think it could really help people sort of find their path in music, and that's really what I'm dedicated to now that I'm in, especially now that I'm moving to Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University. Is this portfolio that one must have? I think of it as a mosaic.
Yeah.
One's career these days in music. You know, some of the pieces are going to be brighter and shinier than other pieces. Some are going to be larger. But it's this combination that's essential for us all to have a life in music. And it's this mosaic that I focus on now. And I'll move some pieces in and some pieces out, depending on where my musical and pedagogical interests take me.
Right.
But it's this combination which really makes me thrive.
So how do you best address that with your students? I mean, obviously in pieces that you choose, or being fluent in playing marimba and playing drum set, in theater work. I mean, obviously there's ensembles on campus, or there's activities on campus, whatever. But do you kind of address that specifically in how you teach, or the way you teach, or how you kind of structure your studio?
For sure, yeah, that's a great question. I begin with just your core foundational, sort of the 4 to 5 major food groups.
Candy's at the top.
Exactly, right. Ice cream.
Right.
Anyway, so you have your core foundational 4 major food groups: snare drum, 2-mallet keyboard, 4-mallet keyboard, timpani, and complementary accessory percussion instruments.
Right.
One must have a strong and solid foundation of core technique and sound on those instruments and with those techniques. And that for me is at the undergraduate level. From there, we build on that with two areas. A selection of hand percussion, again, developing core fundamentals of technique and sound.
Mm-hmm.
But also, for me, this is where my job comes in. I need to find a way in with each student. What makes them happy? What's going to make them thrive? What areas do they have? Where do they have deficiencies? And how can we address those deficiencies in a way that's going to keep them moving forward and is going to augment their skill set? So if there's a deficiency in time or groove, let's find a hand drum that can satisfy the requirements of sound and technique, but can also address the elements of sound, time, and groove that they might benefit from.
Right.
It's about a conversation. It's about, again, you got to build trust with each student. And each student's going to have a different area that they might gravitate towards. And one of my jobs is to help the student to understand that these core fundamentals are necessary for them when they want to take that next step to that area that is truly their passion, where they find a niche that might be in their wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about percussion is that each of us has a different set of talents and skills. And no two percussionists, this is the thing I love really about what we do as percussionists, have the same job. And getting that student to that point where they can access and actuate those skill sets on their own.
Right.
And that's my job, right?
Sure. Do you ever integrate I mean, from your experience as being associate artistic director or learning how to book gigs, work with programmers, work with possible, composers, commissioning stuff, more of the kind of nuts and bolts of being a working musician. Do you ever integrate some of that?
Oh, for sure. I talk about that all the time in lessons and in master classes. And I sort of call it MLC, music learning curve. It's about being able to have a conversation with anyone sort of up and down the food chain, from the production manager, who really needs to be one of our best friends as a percussionist.
Right.
And the sound guy.
Totally. It's amazing also, and now I'm almost 50, as I've seen my friends and colleagues in other areas of our fields develop their careers. It's amazing how you run back into people after many years. I remember that, 1992, I played the Marlborough Music Festival in Vermont. It's very famous for string players and pianists. Peter Serkin and Rudolf Serkin. Rudolf Serkin was the founder. Now the artistic director is Mitsuko Uchida. They brought me up to play the Bartok Sonata for two pianos and percussion with Andras Schiff. And I remember I met the stage manager. Her name was Karin Kloster. Super nice, right? And I remember, it's very important to be nice to everybody. It's easy to be nice to Karin.
It's nice to be nice.
Yes, because she's so awesome. Well, let's jump ahead 20 years. Now she's the director of international touring for Columbia Artist Management, right? This was her summer job as a stagehand for Marlborough. Well, one tour, the Mariinsky Orchestra from St. Petersburg with Valery Gergiev came to New York to play Carnegie Hall. They needed an extra percussionist. I got lucky enough to be called by Karin after all these years.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just, proof that, you can be a great player, an amazing musician, but if you're difficult to work with, or you don't return phone calls, or you don't learn the rep or take time to be a nice guy, like, you're not going to get called back. Or when an opportunity comes back up, like you're saying, years down the road, you might miss out on a great opportunity. So yeah, it's cool to hear that I'm sure a lot of educators do, but just from your experience, you can integrate kind of that into your pedagogy, into your instruction.
Yeah, Tim, I think you've probably seen this as well over the years. Our field has exponentially grown in leaps and bounds in terms of the amount of great teachers and great players out there since I was a student, since I was 15. And what I tell my students now is, there are so many great players out there, everyone can play, right? But it's those intangibles, being prepared, being early, being nice, being a great hang, being an empathetic citizen, being open to new experiences, being able to have a conversation with anyone, building that trust. It are those, excuse my grammatical issue at the moment, but those attributes are the ones that are going to serve you well in a day and age when everyone can play.
I've been in with Black Swamp for 18 full-time years now, and really was one of the first official employee, even part-time, when I was going to school. And the only reason that I kind of ended up here is, even at that time I was working hard, and it wasn't my musicality that kind of got me here, even though I was practicing a lot and stuff like that and getting degrees, but there was a lot of other elements that kind of outside of musical ability that kind of led me to this position. And sometimes people even ask me, like, if I go visit schools or universities and stuff, how did you get involved and how did you end up where you are? And sometimes I think it's, definitely who you know or being in the right place at the right time, but it's also working hard and being a cool person, like you said, being a nice guy. So, yeah, cool. So what do you do outside of music? Anything that might, like sometimes I like to find out, you're so kind of engrossed in what you're doing, and sometimes people need a way to decompress, maybe, or kind of relax or chill out that isn't connected to the music world or industry. Is there anything you kind of do to decompress?
For sure, yeah. I'm a big swimmer. That's my personal time. I try to swim almost every day. That's one of my big decompression areas. But another is yoga. I'm a big sort of student of Iyengar yoga. And this is from a method developed by Mr. Iyengar in Pune, India. I was lucky enough to have an amazing teacher in Ann Arbor, Lori Blakeney. And Ann Arbor was actually one of the first places that Mr. Iyengar came to when he came to the United States to start to teach. And since I'm really tall, and since I play percussion, and as a youngster, when I was playing all those sports, I had a fair amount of injuries. This yoga and swimming have been my real sort of saving graces in terms of my physical health.
Sure.
In terms of mental health and sort of escape, I love hiking.
Yeah.
Being out in nature. I try to do that every day in some way, shape, or form. When I get to go home to Oregon to see my family, we always go on hikes, and of course it's a beautiful state for that. I'm looking forward to exploring some of the terrain around Bloomington. I hear there's some beautiful lakes right around IU, so I'm excited about that. Believe it or not, even though I'm touring a fair amount, I love to travel. I get very excited still when I get on a plane.
Yeah,
which I think I'm lucky in that regard.
A lot of this is kind of a common thread. I mean, people, when I ask them a similar question, they, nature, being outside, and then traveling. Like I was talking to Megan Arns last month, I think, or a while ago, whenever we're listening to this podcast. So it's a few episodes ago, I think. But she said the exact same thing. Like she loves getting to the airport and getting on an airplane and traveling. Like it excites her and it kind of motivates her and keeps her, I think, focused on the stuff that she's doing. But personally, I hate airports and airplanes, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, travel is a big one, I think, because obviously, if you're traveling out of the U.S., experiencing some other cultures and finding some inspiration there, and traveling in general can be, therapeutic, maybe in a sense, or
for sure,
yeah.
Therapeutic and inspiring. I'm that person who I always get the window seat because I still love to get on that airplane and look out that window and
right.
soak it all in.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be motivation too. Then is kind of again traveling, or like how you stay motivated or stay energized about just touring and playing in general.
For sure, yeah. I think the relationships that I have with my colleagues, either current colleagues that I've been touring with for a while, or new colleagues that I'll meet when I'm on the road, is a huge motivating factor. I think for all of us, being prepared is a very solid motivator for me. Having a daily practice routine, staying in really good shape musically, because as we all get older, the time that one has to practice and prepare, it gets exponentially lower as sort of life takes over. So I'm motivated by a really intrinsic sense of preparation, but I'm also motivated by this collaboration that that I was talking about earlier, and wanting to, I don't want to let my colleagues down. I want to be ready. I want to be prepared. I want to be able to contribute in a musical way, and one can only do that if one is prepared technically, score studied, knowing your part extremely well. And these days, especially, Silkroad will put a show together in one day. So we'll fly somewhere, one day of rehearsal, and then play the show. It's just a real necessity to be in great shape and be as prepared as possible.
Yeah, and then obviously that's a really important point. Again, some of the pedagogy concepts of being prepared, like musically and professionally, go hand in hand. And again, some of the other people that I talk to are playing in groups or ensembles, and the individuals are spread across the United States, or in your case, around the world with Silkroad. Like, you have a concert coming up, and like you said, one day to kind of prepare. You can't come into it with like, oh, I forgot my sticks. Like you gotta be on the ball. Like you gotta have all the work done ahead of time when you get there and put it together.
Yeah. The other thing though that also motivates me after that is I always tell my students, if you want an exciting and super energetic lesson, get me the day I get back from tour, because I love bringing back everything that just happened, either the new music, the new city that I've been to, a different type of style or instrument that I've been playing. That's another really big motivator for me in my teaching is the experiential aspect of that, and I really infuse that into my teaching, and that's why it's so important to me to keep playing and keep commissioning and keep touring.
Yeah, great. Well, you're nailing it. So, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us over the years. Like, didn't really mention at the beginning of the podcast, but obviously you're one of our very first official artist endorsers. So, your longtime support is much appreciated. And just this conversation today, I mean, there's just a ton of valuable information that I think is great for educators and students and musicians or non-musicians even to hear. Just thanks for your time, and thanks for the conversation.
Oh, Tim, I appreciate it. And back those many, many years ago when you called and asked me to join the roster, that vote of confidence and the belief that you had in me as a player just meant the world to me. And, I get a lot of questions from students about endorsements, especially in our field of percussion.
Sure.
And my first response is, I will only endorse a company whose instruments that I absolutely love and that I play all the time. And that is 100% true for Black Swamp. And so I can't thank you enough for your support over the years. It's just been outstanding.
Yeah, it's great to hear. I appreciate it. Well, Joe, good luck in Indiana, and you feel free to come up and visit anytime. The door's always open. We'd love to see you again soon.
All right. Yeah, I think it's just a straight shot right up the highway. So we'll do that. And Tim, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for having me on the series.
Okay. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio assistance by Nathan Coles. And music by Adam Hopper.
This call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.